Enablers! All of you! I thought my computer addiction had peaked when I went on a Z440 bender that lasted about 4 upgrade videos, and isn't over yet. But then you had to poison my mind with your relentless suggestions in the comments, and I like it. Well, look where we are now. This is the Dell Precision 5810, and it's your fault. And I like it. Normally I would buy something like this bare bones and then add the upgrades myself, but this already came with some solid modifications. And at $150, the price was right. I guess I can add a stick of RAM. Well, RAM and an SSD, and they have a pretty crazy situation going on with the GPU. So that'll need replaced, but aside from that, we're pretty set. Let's start by going over the existing specs, which means we will be going onto the chair desk. Alright, the Dell Precision 5810 Micro Tower. This is actually really similar to the Z440 in several ways that you'll see as we go along. This has the same type of motherboard, LGA 2011-3, so that obviously accounts for a lot of the similarities. It'll run the same type of CPUs as the Z440, specifically the older Intel Xeon processors. We've done several videos on this channel featuring these old Xeons. What I really like about these is the very low price considering what you get, as well as the wide range of specs. There are 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 plus core processors, all available for this type of board, and all around $20. Most of them run between 3 and 4 gigahertz, and they're really cheap compared to similar i-series processors. This came with the E5-1650V3. That's 6 cores, 12 threads, running at 3.8 gigahertz turbo boost. For RAM, we have DDR4 2133 MHz, and this came with 8 gigabytes, which I'll probably throw another 8 in there. It came with a 640 gigabyte HDD, but we'll want to run the operating system and core apps from a solid state drive. I'll use this for additional storage on this machine, or possibly just throw it into my home server. Unfortunately, there's no M2 slot on the board, but I'm hoping we'll be able to use a generic M2 to PCIe adapter, similar to this turbo drive I use on the HP builds. If not, we might be stuck with a 2.5-inch SSD, at least for now, but we'll see. Before we talk about the crazy GPU situation that they have going on, which will have to change, a quick note about power supplies. Yet another similarity to the HP Z440. This PC was manufactured with different variations, each containing a different power supply. And this is definitely something to look out for, because it seems that some variations have GPU connectors and some don't. For example, the one we're using here with the 685 watt power supply has 2 6-pin connectors, whereas there appears to be another version with a 425 watt power supply that has no connectors. That could be a problem, as it'll seriously limit the type of GPU you can install, especially when you factor in the price to performance of different models of GPU. Now, onto the graphics card this came with, which is very questionable. Unlike something else, which is never questionable, chair desk. Because if you question chair desk, we question you. Question 1, how dare you? Question 2, who do you think you are? Question 3, you. Alright, now on to the GPU, which of course stands for G people. You better not question the chair desk if you know what's good for you. This actually came with a decent graphics card. It's the GTX 970, and typically it wouldn't be a bad match for this machine. The standard GTX 970 has two 6-pin connectors, and this computer has two 6-pin connectors. So it would work out nicely, except this is the tri-fan version of the 970, and this has one 6-pin connector and one 8-pin connector. If we look more closely, they have a bit of a ridiculous situation in here, and there's no way this thing should work properly the way it's set up. First of all, they're using a 6-pin to 8-pin adapter, and that is no good. The 6-pin cable carries about 75 watts, and the 8-pin input requires 150 watts, so it's probably just not getting enough juice there. And on the other connector, instead of using the available 6-pin cable floating in the case, they decided instead to use a SATA power to 6-pin adapter. Again, not enough power, and this is just not going to work out. This is a bit disappointing, but really not a huge deal. It's still a good GPU, and it's more valuable than the standard version of the 970. I could likely sell it for $80 to $90, or just use it on another build. So again, even though it's not right for this machine, it's not a huge issue. So we'll pull the GPU and then just kind of break this down and poke around in here, kind of look around at what we have. Overall, at first glance, I like the looks of it. I like the setup. It's like surprisingly heavy. It's a good bit heavier than the 440, which it doesn't really matter. The weight's not an issue, just an observation. So we're popping out the GPU. I'll replace that probably with a standard 970. I also just want to see if we can boot from one of these generic M2 to PCIe adapters so we can run a faster SSD that way. We'll remove the bay for the optical drive, and you can see below here we have our two sort of wind tunnels for the RAM. That's pretty cool. Pop those off and we can see along the front here there's actually 3 fans all lined up across the front, which is a pretty nice touch, and 2 of them are just feeding directly into those little tunnels for the RAM to cool the RAM, and the other one is sort of floating there. Overall, it looks pretty sharp inside. I'm liking the overall feel of the layout, and obviously the components, which you know how much I like the Z440, so again, very similar. And here's one more thing that I like. We have a diagram including the memory load order on the front panel here. A lot of workstations seem to have these, but I always appreciate little things like that. That's a nice touch. And really quickly, I'm just going to throw in a temporary GPU along with our adapter, just to see if the drive is recognized during the install process. And it does appear we'll be able to install directly to that drive, which means we'll be able to run our operating system off of it, which is definitely a positive. Overall, I think this computer looks really solid, which is probably no surprise to you if you've seen some of the other videos and know how much I like the Z440s, because again, they're very similar. But anyway, that's all for this one. Thank you as always. I really appreciate everyone who's watching. That's awesome. Thank you, and I will catch you later.